All right, we are live. What is going on, everyone? Um, we were talking this week about the upcoming rotation, and it kind of took me by surprise. I didn't realize it was coming with this set that is set to release early next month. So we gotta discuss. Okay, what are we going to lose to Legacy when this happens? And yeah, let's. I just wanted to go through and show you what cards are worth considering as things that we'll either have to find replacements for or just, make do without them. So the sets that are going to be lost to Legacy are these four sets here. Everything else is already in Legacy, and anything ahead of it is staying in Standard. So this is the last major rotation we're going to have for a couple of years. It's just the way that Magic the Gathering just works that way. I wonder if the folks at Webcore will consider going a different route as far as legacy rotation goes. But they haven't made any announcements about doing anything like that. So we're just going to treat it like they're going to follow Magic's schedule, the paper schedule. So we'll go through each rarity, and I will talk about the cards that are worth talking about and maybe mention a few that I think are noteworthy in terms of impact when we lose them, or maybe they aren't going to be that big of a deal and it's worth mentioning that because a lot of people always kind of lament the rotation into Legacy, but Standard is getting bigger and bigger, and with another rotation not happening for a couple of years, and then we're not even going to lose that much, I don't think, when that happens. So it's really worth talking about what we're going to get here and uh, not really what we're going to get, what we're going to lose here. So without further ado, let's talk about the masterpieces and just work our way down. So let's apply what we got here. Jin Gataxias Core Augur. It's not a card you see played a lot, maybe because of that 24 mana cost, but it is a really strong card, and it always makes me a little nervous to see when it hits the board because the fact that it just discards your hand every turn, every one of after the end of their turn, or is after the end of your turn, it discards everything. Yeah, that's what it is. Um, it's a card that I don't use a ton, but I do think it is a good one. So some people, I'm sure, will be sad about that. Kiora, Sovereign of the Deep. This is a staple card for some of my green and blue loop decks. So personally, I'm going to miss this card. I don't think a lot of people otherwise will. It's a great way to fetch Mystical Teachings and get it to your hand with full mana. So that's why I use it. I'll have to use something like Diluvian Primordial, for example, to make up for that. It's a card that I will miss, but yeah, if other people don't care, I don't blame them. So let's see. Anything out of here? Inexorable Tide and Urza's Saga. These two cards pair together really well. Inexorable Tide is an easy way to get proliferate loops going, so it works really well with sagas. Beyond that, it's a pretty niche card. People aren't really playing Toxic much, so you don't see it used for that purpose anymore, but it is strong for that. But I don't know. Most people, unless they have sagas they really love, like Tamio meets the Story Circle, I don't think we'll miss it too much. Same thing with Urza Saga. It works really well because you because it is a saga. So it keeps proliferating this last card, or this last chapter, and fetching an artifact and gaining mana over and over again can be really strong. Right now, I don't think there's a really lethal loop for this card right now. So, I mean, Urzasog definitely had its day, but I don't think a lot of people will be missing it. Okay, oops. Omnixilis is a fairly niche card that also had its day, but you never really see it anymore. I think losing Queza made it a way less viable card, even though you can still play it and it's still a good card if you build for it. It's just not as easy to build for anymore. Zancha is a really good card that will be missed just because of all the creature destroy objectives. It slots in really well for that. So you definitely used to, you'll definitely feel that when you're trying to build, when you're trying to put things on your opponent's side. This card is excellent for that. So it really helps to hit certain objectives. So I think that's one of the first ones that I notice will be one that will be missed. Just in general. The Urza lands are okay. They just take up too much space in your deck, and they don't really do enough on their own to be worth it. But once you get them all on board, then they're pretty strong. But I don't know. I don't think a lot of people are worried about it. And then nothing here. Everflowing Chalice had potential, but it just never really lived up to it. So let's go into the mythics. Portal to Phyrexia. Good card. A lot of people play that one still. I wouldn't say, well, actually, I don't know. Is it a lot of people? Not as many as there used to be. I think there are better creature removal and better fetch from graveyard at this point, only because of the high mana cost. Atraxa will definitely be missed by a lot of people. Since her nerf, you definitely saw the popularity drop by a lot, but it's still a really solid card. I actually use Atraxa more in Legacy because of its loop enabling, or loop continuation potential, I should say. So that's where I think that people use this card more nowadays. So I don't think a lot of people will miss this card that much. I'm sure there are a lot of Atraxa diehards out there that will be really sad to see it go, but I personally don't think it's that big a deal. Cityscape Leveler, though, is a bigger deal for sure. Definitely still a very popular card, just because continuous removal is really strong and pretty much overpowered in this game. So I think a lot of people will be sad to see this one go, though. With Rakdos and Felia and cards like that in Standard, I don't see it played as often, but it is a strong card, and I do think people will miss it. Croxa and Kunaros, another strong card that doesn't get enough play anymore, because I think with the rotation of Meeting of the Five out of Standard, I think a lot of people just stopped using it that much because it was an easy way to fetch it. But I still see this card in certain decks that use it really well, and I think people who use this card will miss it. Phyrexian Vindicator, I will not be sad to see it go. I never really play it, but I know a ton of people do, and it's just one of those cards that sneaks up on you because you just forget it exists sometimes, and then you end up playing against it and you have no way of dealing with it, and it can win games on its own for the person you're playing against. So I'm sure a lot of people will be sad to see this one go, even though they have Sabsunin to replace it basically, and so you'll see it there. You'll see that card probably get an uptick. But Phyrexian Vindicator, super strong card, very annoying. I'm happy to see it go. Let's see, anything here? Blade Coil doesn't get used very much. Capricious Hellraiser, I will miss this card a lot. It's one that I still use a fair amount, especially in mono red, because it just in ETB, fetching something from your graveyard, either a spell or support, and putting it into play is really strong. I'm surprised not more people use this card, but it's awesome. I use it a lot in Legacy even. It's a Legacy impactor for sure. So if you do end up getting this card, and you're worried about it not being standard anymore, still worth having because it's a great Legacy card as well. Blade Coil used to be seen a lot more before they nerfed it. The nerf was necessary. It was a super oppressive card how it used to work, but still a little bit scary when you see it and played in the right decks. But definitely it has time has passed it by because of its nerfing. Shieldred, a good card that you won't see as often in Legacy. I don't know if it's a Legacy impactor. I think there's a lot of really good graveyard, recursion deck or recursion cards. So I don't know if Shieldred is one that will impact Legacy that much. But I do think it's a good card, and I do like it in certain decks. So I'll miss it a little bit. Icor Moon Gauntlet, definitely one that will be missed, because it does do a lot to help enable loops through sagas, but also with the extra swaps you get from using when you have all this loyalty stuff going along with it. And then, yeah, so it's a really good card, and it triggers off of Vanguards. But Vanguards haven't been as good to use that much in Standard. There are some that I really like. Commodore Guff, the Nicole Bolas one is used a lot. Jace Vanguard, which we are losing, will also be one that people will miss, though probably not as much as I think. But Icor Moon Gauntlet, a staple card for me that will be missed, at least as far as I'm concerned. Joda the Unifier, I think Acid Rhapsody might be the only one still playing this card. That's the only reason I am even mentioning it, but I don't think it's that awesome. It definitely had its day when Rocco was around, Meeting of the Five, all those kinds of cards. It was really strong then, but not as much anymore. Maybe people are underrating it, but I think it's a solid card that is not as good as you might think it is. Wrinkle and Torben for medium-sized collections in the newest bowl. It is the newest Bolas Vanguard's ability with haste, if not block, and pairs nicely with chalk outline. We'll get to rares. We're not to rares yet. I'm just going through all the rarities from the top down. Anything here? My Relicy sometimes. Jace the Perfected Mind. Great Vanguard. One that I use a lot, even to this day. So I'm not using the cards, or I'm not using the decks that I have Jace in, but it's really good in the decks that I use it in. Zurgo and Ojutai are pretty good. I don't think a lot of people are using it either. Mishra, claimed by Gix, I see a lot. And it's decent because of this side, the Mishra transformation. Pretty strong. The whole thing about them discarding 2 cards, and it discards from the top of their hand, which is really oppressive. I don't see it used that often, or I see it used often more than I expect to. But I don't know. Maybe that's just me that doesn't find it that great. Thalian the Gitrog monster. People are talking about this card in Gauze's server today on Discord. And it's a pretty good card. It's really good for stopping certain ETBs. So it definitely has relevance. So it's going to be a little bit harder for people who rely on that card to find uh, a replacement for it. But at least there's blind obedience now, and I think people playing that card will use that instead. Urbrask is all right. Had its day when proliferate, escalate were more of a thing, but I don't see a lot of people using it anymore because I think there are better options for what it does. There are a lot of cards in here that I think are just either okay or just had their day that's passed them by. Arcane Proxy was excellent when you had cut your losses still in standard. You could just use that to fetch one with full mana a bunch of times. So I never really tried playing it with Mystical Teachings, but I don't think it would work because it's going to fetch the card that is a higher rarity or a higher mana cost than Mystical Teachings instead. So I don't know if it has a lot of looping potential anymore, but it doesn't really matter at this point. Shanna Purifying Blade I still see sometimes. Still a decent card, but I think there's better in standard these days. So I'm not gonna miss it that much. Nothing in here that's really all that impactful. Titania Voice of Gaia is a good card that you just never see people play anymore because I think people just like other stronger cards. Nothing out of here really. Urza Lord Protector is a cool card, but just kind of in the wrong standard, I would say. All right, we're getting to rares here. I think rares are going to be where we miss the most things here. Galta and Maverin still I see decent amount. It's not as good as just Galta Primal Stampede or whatever it's called, the one that converts gems. But this one had its day. I think it's just been a little bit outclassed by other options. Ovika, same thing. Became irrelevant when Satoru Judith came around, so people don't use that. Breach the Multiverse might be the card I miss from Standard the most. It gave Black a great ability to not only fill your graveyard, but choose things that you want to bring out of not only your graveyard, but your opponent's as well. So it's such a good, useful card and a great thing to fetch with Mystical Teachings. So it'll be the card I probably missed the most from this standard. City on Fire was cool. It was a little bit more of a win more most of the time, so I don't know if a lot of people would use it these days. Danitha, you don't see her as much, but it's still a really awesome card. Being able to fetch an equipment or aura card from your library and just put it into play. Pre-nerf was everywhere. Post-nerf, you still saw it a lot because you still got a good amount out of this and Blade of Shared Souls. But there are some solid cards that you can use instead of this one now, but still very good card that will be missed by, I'm sure, a good handful of people. Eternal Wanderer Vanguard got some use from me. I probably should use it more. It's just one of those cards that wasn't quite good enough to use in most decks, just because it's got 17 mana cost. Jeru and Hazaret, again, another card that you would think would have been more prevalent, but I don't know. People just didn't really catch on with it. Leyline Binding, Archpriestess Shadows is another one that I will miss a lot. Being able to fetch something out of your, being able to fetch a permanent out of your graveyard every time a creature with Death Touch attack was really strong. And you could get a lot of good stuff for free out of your graveyard. So this and Breach the Multiverse paired together excellently. And yeah, I will be sad to see this one go. I'm really surprised more people don't use this card, but I don't know. Maybe they just don't feel it necessary. Over the Top, another card that I will miss a lot. It'll make some of my loop decks harder to pull off, but you know, that's just the way it is with these looping decks. You lose one key piece and then your loop just is not as good as it used to be. Let's see. Knight Errant of Eos is good for certain creature casting objectives. I'll probably use Rip instead. Good card. But yeah, I really like this one. I'll miss it for certain coalition events. Titania's Command, I started using a lot more because of exiling my own graveyard to pump up my Dragonhawk and other things that want a lot of stuff in your exile. So a lot of people who use that strategy will probably be a little sad to see it go, but we can use Cease now. So maybe you don't have to rely on this card, but I think it's a good one either way. It's a little cheaper than Cease too, which is relevant. Kothfire of Resistance. I don't use it that much anymore, but it is a really good win con in the right types of decks. It definitely had its day, and it still can be a little scary to face sometimes. It can sneak up on you and do a lot of damage against you. So, yeah, definitely one that was worth chasing a couple of years ago. And I think you just don't see it as much anymore because people have just kind of gotten bored of it a little bit, but still a really strong card. As was mentioned in the chat, Rankle and Torbran, good card. Being able to destroy your own creature and others, it makes them relevant for certain objectives. So that's worth thinking about. But yeah, now we'll just have to use it in Legacy for certain creature destruction events in that regard. But cool card. Definitely one that is beloved by a few people. Chewable Trash, I know, likes that card a lot, and I think she still uses it here and there. But I know that card carried her for a while. Rhea Ivor, a card that was pretty popular when it first came out. Then I think people just kind of lost sight of it. I guess you could say it just wasn't in the conscious of the game as much anymore. But I recently kind of fell in love with it because I was doing things with the restore cards from Tarker Dragonstorm and pumping this guy up to an absurd level and creating tons of tokens with it. So that's a fun way of using it. But it took a while for me to find a really useful reason for playing it. Blade of Shared Souls, as was mentioned before. Really strong with Danitha, but it is just a solid card overall. Rhea can still be nice, but it may fall to the side with token animations. Yeah, that is one thing. I really hope they address token animations. It's one thing that I'll never stop talking about to them. I'll never stop bringing it up until they do something about it. Let's see. Sea Double, a good card. I almost forgot it existed, but some people might still use that one. I see Elder Dragon War sometimes. I'm not 100% sure why. For the red dragon, maybe? I don't know. I'm surprised to see it played sometimes. Astor Bearer Blades might be a better legacy card anyway, so I don't think a lot of people are going to care that it's gone. Anything out of here? Glissa Sunslayer. Okay, this gets interesting because now we're getting into Colors of Magic cards, and there's going to be a lot of stuff that we're going to lose to Colors of Magic, which is going to completely change the landscape of that event. So this is going to be interesting. No more Glissa Sunslayer, but no more Painful Quandary. And I feel like a lot of the reason people were playing Glissa Sunslayer was to get rid of Painful Quandary. So if you don't have to deal with Painful Quandary anymore, do you still even care about playing Glissa Sunslayer in that event? Maybe, maybe not. But because these are 11 cost cards here, they're always going to be somewhat relevant in that event. Same with Kaito Dancing Shadow. Was not a great card to play otherwise, but it did have use in Colors of Magic. So 3 cards that will most likely be very much missed out of that event. I don't know if people are playing Phyrexian Dragon Engine, but that's not a bad card either. Vat Emergence, I used a little bit in Colors of Magic because I just didn't have other things to use. But out of here, I don't see anything that even... I couldn't even tell you what half of these cards even do. So Sten, decent card. One that I used in looping decks. Doesn't quite hold up anymore. I think it definitely had a time where I was using it a lot more than I am now. But it is a solid card. Tyvar Jubilant Brawler. This is a very good card that I don't use as much. Once I got Akroma's Memorial, this mostly took the place of it, but there are situations where you want to use this instead of Akroma's Memorial. Loop decks, for example. So the creatures entering, even if they're summoned, get haste, is really strong. And I think Gauze will miss this card more than anyone else I know. I guess you could keep using Akroma's Memorial, but it's not that great for looping decks like this card is. Let's see. Anything out of here? Nothing I'm seeing that is really all that impactful. Thrumming Bird I see sometimes, but with Proliferate, Escalate kind of leaving standard, I don't see a lot of people using it. Errant and Giada, fun cards, but again, not super relevant for today's meta. Legions to Ashes, that's going to be one that will suck to lose because it's one of the best ways of getting rid of token supports. So this was being used a lot against Valiana when she was everywhere. But it's still a really good card either way. This is still a card. It's one of the cards for mono black that is still pretty good for removing supports. And so it's not super it's not super popular anymore. Maybe it still is being used a decent amount, but I just don't even notice it happening a lot. But yeah, that's going to be a card that I will miss. Speaking of cards I'll miss, this is one of the biggest hits to me. Not a card I was using a lot anymore, but whenever I do, I'm like, dang, why am I not using threats? Whenever I don't use it, I'm like, why am I not using threats undetected more? Because it's such a good card. It actually works better than is written. So you don't actually have to pick 2 cards. You can pick up to 2 of the first 4 creature cards. You can just pick 1 and then you get the other 3 in your hand and give them 6 mana. So you can just fetch a Whipcracker, fetch all sorts of things with it. Just fetch whatever you need and then put it into your hand and just, play a Temple Discovery right after and put them all into play. So a lot of great reasons to use this card. Really helps with objectives. So it's just going to make certain tasks that you are undertaking a lot harder. Urbrask Forge, good card. I really find it very annoying to face. But yeah, it's a strong card because it just creates a token that gets bigger and bigger every time. And to get rid of it, you have to get rid of the support. So it's a very difficult support to deal with. And it can sometimes take over the game. So um, yeah, this card is really strong, especially for the cost. And yeah, I think a lot of people will miss this card. I am glad that it won't be in standard anymore because it just annoys me a lot. Mercurial Spell Dancer. This had a time when it was very strong. You know, it should probably be used more these days, but with other cards that are better for what it does, maybe that's why. But it is probably a card I should have used more often than I ever did. I had times where I was using it more, but it came at a time where we didn't have tons of great spells in standard, and now that we do, we just forget that that card even exists. Soul Partition, really strong removal for white. I don't see it used as much as it used to be. Flash is good. I think that's what makes this card as relevant as it is. But I think there are plenty of other options, even in mono white, for t that you might not miss this card that much. Again, one of those cards that had its day. Fateful Handoff is fun for certain shenanigans, but it really always takes the right card to pair it with. It's never great on its own. So, kind of a novelty card that I don't think a lot of people are going to miss, but it's the only one that is worth talking about there. Same here. Nothing that I see being used often at all. Jor Kadeen sometimes, but I think that's just like one person I get matched up with all the time. Anything here? Academy Lore Master. Some people use that in Colors of Magic because of how it makes everything cost more. But I think it's kind of old tech at this point. Anything here? Not seeing much. Stronghold Arena had its day as well. I used to use Stronghold Arena when Angel of Suffering was in standard, but now we don't really have a good reason to need to use it. Soulless Jailer. I know a lot of people like this card because of how it messes with people's graveyards, and that is very relevant. It's definitely one that you could keep using in Legacy because there will be relevant times to use this card. But yeah, probably just one that people don't think about as much as they should. But I think people who do use it will be a little sad to see it go. It's definitely still a card that's worth using. You got a couple of weeks to still use it. Those did pair beautifully, Arena and AOS. Yeah, so you knew. Okay, now we're to uncommons. Actually, let me just do something here real quick. I'll be back in just a minute. Okay, back. Still can do stuff paired with Gix. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think of. I guess I don't really use a lot of Gix cards to be honest. Paladin of Predation. Um, Now we're getting into more relevant toxic cards. Toxic as a mechanic for sure had its day, mostly around when All Will Be One first came out as a set. Was everywhere. Everybody was kind of interested in the ability to win games just by getting that toxic counter up. You still see it here and there. And I do think this will be a relevant strategy even in Legacy for newer players. It'll probably just be a lot harder for them to get the cards to build these decks because we won't see as many sets come out, or you won't see as many events once Revolving Planeswalk leaves standard, right? So they'll probably have to replace it with some new event that gives us more cards from new sets, and therefore we won't see this event very often. Yeah, I don't know what they're gonna do when it comes to Phyrexian block events. Maybe they'll just make new block restricted events, or just convert a lot of them, the old ones, to block restricted events, which would be cool. It would make a lot of these cards that we're talking about more relevant and worth collecting, even if they aren't in standard. But that's just my own wishes talking about. Suchi Cave Guard, pretty good card. For an uncommon, it had a lot of utility. I wasn't using it as much anymore, but it is really a worthwhile card to own, and you should be using it a little more. If you, especially if you don't have a lot of great options, but it does pair with a lot of good stuff out there. Anything out of here? We're probably going to get less and less cards we need to talk about as we go, because there's just going to be less that are useful in the lower rarities. Corrupt basically does the same thing as the PMA Corrupt, so there's like already a replacement for that card in standard and will always be in standard. So it was always a weird choice to make those cards so similar. Involuntary Cooldown, a card I still really like, even if I don't use it much, just because I just don't use a lot of stun counter cards, but I still think it's one of the best stun counter cards out there. Up to the first two opposing creatures gain stun counter and disable those cards until end of turn. The disable is what makes it so good, because you usually have to wait a turn for stun counter to kick in, but if you don't, then it makes stun counter that much better. Let's see. Rona has a pairing with Obnixilis, but it was always kind of bugged, so I think that's what made people not really want to use it. Okay, let's see if we get any cards in here that are relevant for Colors of Magic. We're in the 11s now. Oh, I guess we have been. But let's see. Skyfisher Spider is decent for Colors of Magic because it blocks and it gains you life when it dies. And things die all the time in Colors of Magic. Creatures, I should say. So getting a little benefit upon death is always nice. I would see this card a little bit here and there because it's an easy way to get double strike on one of your creatures. I know people don't love that stupid Muradin token. I don't like him either because it has bravery, and that's the last thing I want to be in the first slot when I attack most of the time. So it's those kind of cards are a little bit annoying. Is that all the 11 mana cost cards from uncommons? Maybe we won't worry too much about what we're losing for Colors of Magic then. Was there anything there? Tatiova is cool with certain land-based decks, but never was amazing. You could do cool stuff with it, but it was an uncommon for a reason. Rona's Vortex was cool. Seal from Existence is a decent card. Symmetry Matrix, not a card I use that much anymore, but excellent card for token-based decks for gaining draw and all that. So um, I think missing this option will be relevant here and there, but I don't know if I will miss it that much. I think other people will miss it more than I do. This card was decent. Queen all in all. Against all odds. Cool card. People just don't have a lot of reason to want to do the blinking right now. I mean, it's still good with like Dragonhawk or something. So there are reasons to use this card, but I think in Legacy we have a few more options for doing that kind of stuff. Cephalod Sentry was a bay on my alt account, but I do like artifact strategies. Which one was Cephalopod? Cephalopod Sentry, where was that? Here we go. What was it again? At the beginning of return. Oh, okay. Yeah, this was a decent card, but there are options now in the, what's it called? The Ether Drift set. Ether Drift actually has cards that basically do the same thing. So there are replacements for that one. Let's see. Am I seeing anything here that's that interesting? I don't see much. Nothing here that I see used often. Again, maybe Jawbone Duelist you see here and there, but not very much. Knight of Dust Shadow. Oh, I am so glad this is going out of standard. This will make play control much more bearable. Your opponent can't gain life. Really screws you in that event. So I'm glad that I won't see this card in that event anymore. It's always really annoying. Let's see. I'm not seeing much of anything there. But it's lovely. Are you talking about the Cephalopod Sentry? It is kind of cool. Necrogen Communion. But yes, facing it can suck. Oh, you're talking about about the knight. Yeah. Necrogen Communion has its uses. Not a card I'm using a lot anymore, but I do like it, and it'll be a little bit sad to see that one go. Not one I relied on much. Shieldred's Edict. I think that this is still one of the best uncommon removal spells in Standard right now. For 6 mana, untargeted removal, even though it's only the last opposing creature, but it can wipe out vanguards or take out a creature and can bypass ward and hexproof and all that. Very underrated card. Still a card I use sometimes. If I just need cheap removal to get rid of like a Rakdos or something, this is still a solid option. So I'm sure there's probably something that I can use that is the equivalent once it rotates, but it's still a card that I think will be a little bit of a sad loss for especially newer players. Streetwise Negotiator. Now this is a card that not a lot of people were using it because I don't think a lot of people understood how it worked unless they tried it or they heard about how it works, because it's basically missing a really key piece of text in its description. It should say right here, that creature's base power becomes X until end of turn. X is equal to that creature's toughness. So if you threw this on a token stack, all of a sudden a stack of tokens that's, 12, a 12-12 stack of 12 soldiers or whatever, all of a sudden is like 144 because you're basically cubing the or squaring the toughness, and then it just keeps going from there. So it was a really budget way to get to break the power cap, but more relevant just to blast through big boss battles and do it in a way that was accessible for everyone, because any rarity can create a decent amount of tokens, and then you just play the Streetwise Negotiator and all of a sudden they're lethal. So I probably actually use that card a little bit more in Legacy, but it is a really good card, especially for uncommon and being a 6 cost creature, which makes it easy to fetch with threats undetected, another card we're losing. So I think it's an underrated card, and it probably shouldn't exist the way it does, but I'm glad it does exist how it does. Couple things here. Balmor Battle Mage Captain had its time. Saren's Steel Seeker, a solid little card for filling up your graveyard. There are better options now, but it had its day. Twinferno, also another card that had some usage. You would think that this card would have been used a little bit more, but I think it just had a little bit too restrictive of requirements to use it a lot. But, giving one of your creatures gaining double strike for a turn is pretty good still for 5 mana. I'm not seeing anything here either. Let's see. No, nothing I see meta impacting there. Yeah, nothing there. And then finally, the commons. Tyrannax Atrocity is probably the one here that is going to probably sadden people here and there, because it is a pretty solid little toxic creature. It's got toxic 3, but it can start putting those toxic counters on your opponent's side right away because it's got haste. So that makes it pretty relevant and why it costs 18 mana. But yeah, with Toxic just leaving standard, you probably just won't see this card very often unless you're playing kind of a newer player in Legacy Quick Battle or something that wants to try and win as quickly as possible. So that will be, its exit will be standard, impacting a little bit, but not a ton. Gulping Scrap Trap, I started using with one of the legacy or one of the sagas from Tarker Dragonstorm, the one that brings creatures out from your graveyard into play. And this card was really useful in that, or it is still useful in that deck. But other than that, it was hard to find a spot for that. But it's just one of those cards where when you find the right place for it, it's really good. But most of the time, it's not going to be. Nothing here that I see used very often. Repair and Recharge was all right. Pretty good effect for a common. Probably just wasn't used that much because of its cost. Vanish into Eternity, solid card. Exile a card with the greatest mana value. Really useful against Rakdos and a bunch of other stuff. So that will be missed by some people. I wasn't using it as much anymore. I think with like Requisition Raid being in standard now, it just kind of renders moot a lot of different cards that card Requisition Raid can take the place of so much removal, so you don't even have to play a lot of removal in your decks anymore when you have a card like Requisition Raid. So a lot of these kinds of cards that can only do one-to-one removal just aren't as relevant anymore. And now we're getting into relevant cards for Colors of Magic. Aggressive Sabotage. This was a good card to use in that event. Your opponent discards the last two cards that can be discarded from their hand. We lose toxic creatures. We may still have ways to do it. Now incoming, MKM has that Gorgon Detective, and EOE may have something else that does poison counter as well. Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know. But good thinking on that Gorgon Detective, the Persuasive Investigators. Yeah, that actually is a fun card to pair with Proliferate. You can win pretty quickly with that card, and but you kind of have to go at it with a lot of really strong cards to high rarity cards. So um, I don't think that's why a lot of people are playing toxic counters. I think they were just using it as an alternate way to achieve a win when you don't have a lot of raw power on your side. At least that's my guess. Let's see. Forging the Anchor is a solid enough card because you're fetching. Targeted fetch always has a place in this game. Fetch the first three artifact cards from your library. Um, the It's only that they don't get mana into their hand or into those cards that you don't see it that often, but I do think that is a solid card. Let's see. There's actually not a lot here that I feel like is gonna impact um, Colors of Magic to lose. Maybe this one a little bit, but I don't think a lot of people are playing Consuming Etherborn. Let's see what else here. Ooh, Static Net and Tolarian Geyser. Those are both staple cards for Colors of Magic. Static Net especially because it can exile random cards, so it bypasses. It can affect supports and bypass any sort of ward or hexproof. So that is a really sad card to lose for Colors of Magic. Tolarian Geyser not as much, but you can play it against yourself if you need to, I believe. And if you still need to hit objectives in that. So maybe there's not a ton that we're losing for um, Colors of Magic, but there are, with the way that we're losing both Painful Quandary and Glissa Sunslayer at the same time, they kind of almost cancel each other out. And yeah, I will not be sad to see Painful Quandary go. And really, that's all that's made a lot of difference in that event. Ossification and Prayer Binding are both good cards, but we have other cards in Standard that do the same sort of effect. A lot of lands we're losing there. I don't know if a lot of people are using these lands anymore, though. Um, yeah, not seeing a lot here either. Mm, again, not a lot that I'm seeing. Like these kinds of cards, they're solid lands, but I think there are lands in Standard that are just as good, if not better, even at the uncommon level. I do like that they're only 8 mana cost. That's not bad for what you get out of them. I don't remember this one. Oh, okay. I was thinking of something else. Zephyr Sentinel was what I was thinking of. Not a lot of people are using this card anymore anyway, but it definitely had its time when you can build some nasty loops with it. You could probably use this for like Kiora or something like that and just reset her ability to fetch mystical teachings. That could be fun. Maybe I'll just like do something with that for fun. um, Let's see. Anything in here that I think is really worth talking about? No. Not seeing anything I use much. Blanchwood Prowler is actually pretty decent little card for destroying your own library. I use this card with Nissa of Shadow Bounds just because it's cheap. And yeah, not bad. Burning Sun's Fury. I think this card went irrelevant once Song of Tauntauns came out because it's just song is a little better for the same price, I believe. Although this does have Convoke 3, so that makes it even a little cheaper. But this is a good card. I just don't think a lot of people used it anymore at a certain point. When Song came out, people didn't really. People would rather just use the better card, even if it's more of a rare card. Prologue to Pheresis. Good card to pair with Toxic Loops. But since Toxic Loops are leaving Standard, no one's going to care unless they play them in Legacy. Terra Sunder had some decent utility for it. I think it's still a pretty good card. Even in today's Standard. Because it does cool stuff. It exiles an opposing artifact or enchantment card at random, and if you do Kicker 2, you can exile an extra one. So for 5 mana, that's not bad. 7 mana if you count the Kicker. Really pretty solid there. I think that's probably about it, unless something really surprises me here that I just forgot about. I think there was like a Shieldred card that I neglected to talk about. Seed of Hope has some use. Destroy the top 2 cards of your library, gain 4 life. Pick one of the first 2 cards from your graveyard. If that has a creature support card, fetch that card. So it's a little fetch. It's a little bit grave fill. Shieldred's Restoration, I think it is. I think that's a spell, black spell. Is that not from these sets? Here it is. Shieldred's Restoration. Pick one of the first 4 cards from your graveyard into play. Move that card into play under your control. If this card wasn't kicked, you lose life equal to that card's mana value. So for its price and its rarity, it is a really good card. There's just so many cards now that bring things out from the graveyard that this card just isn't used very often anymore. But I do think it is pretty good. Vraska's Fall, another good card. If your opponent controls, destroy the first opposing creature. So this is like the Shieldred's Edict, but a little bit better overall, but a little bit pricier. So I guess it's almost like take your pick. Which one do you think is more relevant for you? And yeah, I think that's all I need to talk about there. But yeah, so there you have it. Those are the cards I think are going to be most impactful leaving Standard. Honestly, there's only a handful of cards there that I will really miss. Breach the Multiverse, Archpriest. A lot of cards that I'll be happy to see go, like Phyrexian Vindicator, Painful Quandary. So overall, in terms of rotation, it's nothing like losing Streets of New Capenna, for example. So this is one of the least impactful legacy rotations, or one of the least impactful Standard rotations, I should say. So fear not, especially if you're keeping up on the later sets that we've been getting, all this stuff over here. I think you'll do just fine making do with what you have been collecting if you're on top of things. So yeah, there you go. Hope you enjoyed my thoughts on it. There's probably plenty to quibble with, but yeah, let me know if you feel like I missed something, that one of your favorite cards that you're still using from these sets that I didn't talk about. Let me know. Otherwise, have fun and don't sweat the upcoming rotation too